The 2000s was an amazing time for Star Wars gaming. Titles like LEGO Star Wars, The Force Unleashed, Empire at War, KOTOR, and many others made this time for Star Wars gaming really special. And today we're probably going to look at one of the most memorable titles from that time, Star Wars Battlefront 2004. While not as popular as the next game, Star Wars Battlefront 2, this game is still special in its own right. So without further ado, let's get right into it, but like always, remember to go ahead and like and subscribe and leave a comment of any other games you would like to see me do in the future, and tell me how I did on this video because I always like hearing what you guys have to say about my content. But either way, let's get right into the video. So obviously you can't confuse this game with the new Battlefront, which I haven't played and I probably will never play. Star Wars Battlefront 2004 was made, well, in 2004 and released by LucasArts and developed by Pandemic Studios. From what I've gathered, Pandemic Studios was actually a really good developer. I've never played any of their games, but I have seen that they did specialize in war-style games, so that's probably why they were tapped to do this. Now the main goal that the developers had in mind whenever they made this game was that this was going to be a multiplayer experience, and the offline stuff was just going to be kind of a secondary thing. Because this game came out whenever the online gaming sphere was kind of really starting to blow up, and LucasArts really wanted to capitalize on it while Star Wars was still really popular. And capitalize they did, because they ended up selling over 4 million copies on all of the different platforms they put this game on. So saying this game was a success would be a huge understatement. And heck, this game remains extremely popular to this day. So to understand why this game is still so popular, let's go ahead and take a look at the gameplay. So this game is both a first and a third person shooter that has you play in both the Clone Wars era and the Galactic Civil War, so both eras are covered in this game. But there's no Phase 2 clone troopers in this because this came out before Revenge of the Sith. Now I know I just said they mainly focused on making this a multiplayer experience, but the single player gameplay in this blows a lot of newer games out of the water today, and it's just about as good as the multiplayer is. The AI in this is pretty good. I mean, they have their moments, but they are enjoyable to play with. Just don't expect them to be a huge challenge. I mean, it really takes a horde of them to really kill you, and they're really not that good at doing any sort of complex tasks, so you pretty much just find yourself having to do everything yourself. Now, unlike the game that came out after this, Star Wars Battlefront 2, this game doesn't have a bunch of different types of battle modes. Each battle is just a conquest mode, and there's really only two ways to actually win a battle in this, and that's by either capturing all of the enemy's command posts or dropping the enemy's unit counter to 0. Now, from what I've found, normally you just end up dropping your enemy's unit counter to 0 before you ever even get all of the other command posts. Because I think there was only 1 or 2 times that I actually managed to capture all of the enemy's command posts before the unit counter dropped to 0. Besides just serving as something to capture though, the command points are also where your units spawn at. So whenever you enter a match or die and have to respawn, you respawn here. Before you spawn in, you also have to decide which unit class you want to play as, and there's 5 different options: a regular infantry unit, an assault class, a sharpshooter, a pilot or engineer, and a special class that's determined by your faction. But deciding which one you want to play as is extremely important for what you want to do in that current moment. Oh, and before I forget, this game also has one of the coolest loading screens I've ever seen. Check this out. I'm sorry, that was just one of my favorite loading screens, and I thought I would just go ahead and show that off. As you guys have probably already noticed, the graphics in this game are really good, and in my opinion, they're actually really ahead of their time, because these graphics are really good, and they were really pushing the console and PC hardware limits of the time. And heck, there's even a lot of people out there that say that this game has better graphics than Star Wars Battlefront 2. While they are pretty close, I would have to say this one looks more polished than the other one, but the texture resolution on the other one's probably a little bit higher. The sound quality in this game is also really good. The sound quality in this is also something that's probably a little bit ahead of its time, because in my opinion, at least on the PS2 and other consoles of its time, this was one of the best sounding games that you could get for those consoles. Another cool little touch is that each faction has their own sound effects. Everything from blaster sounds to what the grenades and the rocket launchers sound like are all different compared to which faction you're playing as. Here's some examples to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. This game also has an amazing soundtrack, but sadly I can't demonstrate that because of YouTube copyright, and then I wouldn't make any sort of ad revenue off this video. Pretty much to sum it up, all of the best tracks from the first 6 Star Wars movies are in this game, and they play at the perfect times. Now, moving on to the unit types. Like I mentioned earlier, there are 5 different unit types you can choose from depending on what you need to do in that particular moment. Now, 4 of those unit types are pretty much the same across each faction, while the 5th one's a unique unit that has its own abilities. Another cool thing about the units is that depending on which planet that you're on, they'll have their own special uniforms for that environment. Well, at least for the Galactic Civil War characters. Because sadly, since there's no Phase 2 clone troopers, the clones really have no variation at all, and the only difference with the battle droids is that you get to play as the regular B1 battle droid instead of the super battle droid. This doesn't really hurt the Clone Wars era that bad, but it's definitely something that the Galactic Civil War era has over this one. Alright, so now looking at the unit types, the first one we're going to look at is the Infantry unit. This unit is obviously your most basic combat unit. Characters in this unit type usually have some sort of blaster rifle, a grenade, and this little crappy pistol here that overheats after you use it a couple times. The only character that's completely unique in this unit class is probably the super battle droid. He has a built-in blaster, and instead of grenades, he has a wrist rocket. And believe it or not, the super battle droid is pretty fun to play as, and in some cases it can actually be the best infantry unit to play as. Especially with that wrist rocket, because it's like having an infantry unit with the benefit of the assault class. Speaking of the assault class is pretty much just an anti-vehicle unit that, unless you're in multiplayer, doesn't really work that well. What I mean by that is that it doesn't do a whole lot of damage to vehicles. I mean, it does do quite a bit, but not enough to really make a difference as a single unit. That, and you have very few rounds to use with your rocket launcher, making it to where you're pretty much defenseless half the time you're using this. Hey, but you do get these landmines you can use, which are very powerful. The only problem is that your AI teammates seem to be fixated over running over these things. The next unit is the sharpshooter, and this unit is extremely overpowered. The sniper rifles that they use can kill a character in 1 or 2 hits, and they also have this recon droid that can send an orbital strike, which I didn't even know that until I read it on the wiki page. This is probably the unit that I play with the most because I'm not very good at these types of games, so it's much easier just camping out in a corner somewhere and sniping people from all the way across the map. The next unit is the pilot or engineer class. This one's pretty self-explanatory. This unit's just the one that goes around and repairs everything, and if you use him in a vehicle, he will constantly repair that vehicle while you're using it. He also can drop health and ammo, which can kind of make them a little bit overpowered because they can just go around healing themselves and giving themselves ammo. This class also has different weapons, but it just really depends on which class you pick. The droids have this cool grenade launcher, while the clones have this weird electrical blaster thing, and the rebels and Imperials have this shotgun blaster. I don't really use this unit a whole lot, but if you need to quickly repair a medical station or an ammo station, this character is definitely the way to go. Okay, so a little bit of a correction. The Imperial unit doesn't have a shotgun blaster. He actually has this cool grenade launcher like the droid, and believe it or not, I started playing as him a little bit and I actually kind of liked him, and he's quickly becoming one of my favorite units to use. So I'm glad I kind of looked back and fixed this. Now this next character class is the special unit type, and each faction has their own unique unit to fill this class. The clones have the jet trooper, which as his name implies, he has a jetpack that helps you get around the world quicker. Sadly, it's not as good as the Battlefront 2's jetpack though. He does have this cool EMP rifle, which is actually really powerful, so using this unit can be kind of useful. Other than that, he still has your typical pistol and grenade, so he's pretty much just like your typical infantry unit with a jetpack and a cool rifle. The Separatists have the droideka, and this unit is probably the best in the game. Not only is this unit extremely hard to take down because of its shields, it can also mow through infantry units like a breeze. And if you find a group of these camped out somewhere, and you will, you're gonna watch your unit counter plummet as they completely mow down your clone troopers. Playing as them can be a little bit weird because their control scheme is completely different. They kind of act more like a vehicle, but just like in the movie, you can also roll up and just roll around the entire world really quick, making this unit very useful if you want to get around the map very quick. The Imperials have the Dark Trooper, and he's actually kind of disappointing. The only thing he really has going for him is this little shotgun blaster, and it's still kind of hard to use, and his jetpack just really isn't that good. Heck, the only thing the jetpack really does is just fling you straight up. It's not really like the one that the clone trooper had, and the AI have no idea how to use this character because all they do is they just fling themselves around. It's actually kind of funny to watch sometimes. He doesn't really have anything else going for him either because all he has is that crappy little pistol and grenades, kind of like all the other characters. So I find using this character to be really pointless. The Wookiee's pretty good though. He has this bowcaster that can be charged up to do a spread shot, and he has like twice the health of the other characters. The only problem is that he's really slow, and he's not too different from a regular regular infantry class. He does have this 5-second time bomb though, that does a lot of damage to everything around it, so that's very useful. This game also has heroes, but you can't play as them and you can't kill them either. The only way they can die is that if something weird happens, like the game glitches or they fall off a ledge. But other than that, if you see a hero and you're on the opposing faction, don't get around them because you're probably going to die. There's also a bunch of turrets and vehicles you can use in each map, which can be pretty useful. I don't find myself using them a whole bunch, especially the turrets, because I just find myself getting sniped every time I use one. But there are some instances where the vehicles can be useful, like here on Renvar, near the entrance to the ice cave. I just used the droid tank to sit there and just destroy all of the enemy units coming through it. Now, I haven't mentioned the game modes in this yet, so let's go ahead and take a look at those. This game has 4 different single-player modes, which consist of 2 campaigns, Galactic Conquest, and Instant Action. The 2 campaigns are based on both the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War. Now, these 2 campaigns are not quite like the one in Battlefront 2, and all you really do is just go through some important events of both eras. When you start one of the missions in the campaign mode, you get this weird little dialogue thing by like Yoda or the Emperor or whoever's the leader of that faction, and the voice acting is kind of weird.
Our long-standing listening outpost on the high peaks of Renvar is under rebel attack. This outpost is key to monitoring the local systems for rebel activity. Defend the monitoring station from the rebel attack.
The Galactic Civil War campaign also has this cool little level here at Tatooine, where besides just you fighting the rebels, you're also fighting the Tusken Raiders. And on top of all of that, you have a Sarlacc in the middle of the map, which if you get too close to it, you get eaten. Galactic Conquest is also a really good game mode, but I don't have a lot of experience with it, so I'm going to try to explain it anyway. I guess you could say it's kind of like a campaign, but instead of doing them in order, you just pick which planet you want to do. I do know that the Galactic Conquest mode in Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a lot better though. Instant action is exactly what you'd think it is. It's pretty much if you just want to hop in and just play a battle, you can pick whatever planet you want, which faction, and just go. The multiplayer in this, I guess, is pretty good. I've noticed it can be kind of unreliable, but it could be me and I could just be doing something wrong, so don't take my word for it. And yes, this still does have multiplayer. I think in 2017, it might have been earlier. LucasArts went ahead and opened up the multiplayer lobbies through Steam again. That way we still have online functionality in these older Star Wars games. Now, it's more popular to see people use Star Wars Battlefront 2 over this one, but it still does function. I've just had some issues with it. The modding community for this is also amazing. This kind of goes for all of the old LucasArts games, because the modding community is really what has kept these games alive for all these years. So that's about all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I've been thinking about doing this video for a long time, and I just figured now would be the perfect time to do it. And one of these days I'll get around to working on Star Wars Battlefront 2 2005. But before that, I'll probably make the Mario Kart Wii video before that. Also, with the new membership tier, I want to thank Cody for becoming the first super supporter. It's greatly appreciated, and if you guys would like to have your name put at the end of these videos, just hit the join button down below and become a super supporter. You'll get early access to videos and get your name put at the end of these videos. And if we can get up to 10 or 15 supporters for this tier, I'll take some renaming selections for this tier so we can make it sound a little bit better. And we'll put it up on a community poll to see which one you guys will like the best. But if you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want more content like it, please subscribe. See you guys in the next video.